All right, today 845 intercooler kit on this 2014 Veloster Turbo. Let's do it. First step we're doing today is we're going to remove the intake off the car, just so we can access the cold pipe and everything in here. So we're going to get everything out of the way just to make space to work. Next up, we're going to go ahead and get the clamps off this cold pipe. I'm not exactly sure which kit this is on this car. This is an aftermarket cold pipe, so we're just going to loosen all the brackets while it's easy to get to. Now the last clamp on the throttle body. I use a cheater tool, my good old Matco. All right, so next step would be removing the crash bar and everything off the front of this car. So everything's going to be a 10 millimeter or 12 millimeter socket. So I like to just start on the left and work my way across. First thing I'll do is go through with a 10 millimeter and remove the bracket under the bottom, the sensors, the horn, the shroud that's on the stock intercooler. And then I'll go take this off at the end. There are four 12 millimeter bolts and then two small 10 millimeter nuts. So that's what we're going to do now. Start off on this side here. There's the horn bracket up here. Oh, Mr. Matco died. Oh, that sucks. Gosh darn it. All right, after you pull these sensors, you have these clips under here. You can reach under, and it's just a push pin. Just push it and pinch and pull. On the back side of this, same thing, a little pinch and pull it out. Same thing with up here, pinch and pull it out. We'll just leave this off to the side for now. And then carrying on, go back to this bracket here. Pull this off. This is not going to be reused ever again, so you can throw it away. Always save your nuts. And the 10 millimeter nut here that comes off, I like to take these off now just to get them out of the way so I don't forget. All right, these two nuts or bolts on the intercooler, you don't have to do this now. You can actually pull the crash bar first, but since we have the 10 millimeter on the wrench to save some time, go ahead and remove these. Again, you're not going to reuse this, but just save the nuts and bolts because they always come in handy to have extra. And then this will pull off once you get the crash bar out. And moving on is the last 10 millimeter nut on the crash bar. It's going to be removing the four 12 millimeter nuts that hold the crash bar, and we'll pull the crash bar off. So we'll get those. There's two on top, and then there's going to be two on the bottom. And the two on the bottom down here. Now the next side. And the two on the bottom, and this thing is ready to remove. All right, with all the nuts and bolts removed, we just pull the crash bar right off of here. We're gonna remove the brackets that hold the radiator on this side, and then the bracket that holds the intercooler on this side, just to move them out of the way. We're gonna reuse the radiator bracket later, so save that. The intercooler one we're not gonna use, so we're gonna keep that with, if you toss it, I don't know if you're gonna sell it, who knows, just goes with the intercooler. These are 10 millimeter bolts. There's gonna be 4 of them. So remove that. We don't need that anymore. Just keep it with your intercooler in case you ever want to reuse it or sell it. This will go with this. Since we're here, we'll just remove this hose off your stock blow-off valve here, or bypass valve, whatever you want to call it. Oops. Okay, got that off. And what I like to do to get this off, because you'll never pull it off, I just get the needle nose pliers in there and kind of. That's it. All right, we're now underneath the car to get the hot pipe off, and first thing we want to do though is remove these plastic covers. They're all 10 millimeter bolts, so you have 2 up on the K-rails or the frame. So we'll remove those. 1 and 2. And then on the other side, will be set up the same, so. All right, and then go to the underside. There's gonna be a few down across the whole bottom here that we pull all those out. There's one side. And there's only one other holding it here. Pull that off. And those are out of the way. To make this easy for you guys, so you can pull this off in one full piece instead of undoing all the hose clamps on here, is we'll remove the one off the intercooler piping, or off the intercooler itself. There's going to be 2 12 millimeter bolts that hold the pipe to the motor. We're going to pull those, and then we're going to get back to where the turbo is, which is all the way up at the top in here with the turbo. We're going to pull that clamp off here. Once we pull that off, we can drop this whole unit out as one piece and save you guys some time. We're going to remove this cap. So they're just little caps that go over threads. So sometimes I like to get a screwdriver in the little wedge there, kind of give it a little hit. Nothing happened. You can try pliers, get them in there and wiggle it. So you kind of just, there we go. Nice and loose, so it'll come right off the intercooler there. So you can just wiggle it off like that. All right, so next up is going to be removing this clamp off the turbo. You put the socket on there. Hopefully you can turn this by your hand if it's not too tight. No, this one's too tight, so get your handy dandy ratchet, and there's not a lot of room in here, so I like to usually get the ratchet handle up and into the car. This is a little bit big for this area. I have a smaller ratchet I usually use, but if you guys have a little 1/4 inch ratchet, that's the best thing to use on this. It's usually what I have. But yep. Okay, let's see if that'll wiggle off there. Wiggle it down off the turbo. a 10 millimeter nut here that we need to remove that holds all the electrical onto the bracket to the intercooler. It's kind of hard to get to for me to get the car jacked up so high, and I'm short. Bolt that's OEM are always nice to have. So that loosens the cables off there. There's a clip here that we're going to end up pulling off. But we'll do that when we rotate the intercooler out. So unclip the boost sensor, so there's just a little button you push here, pinch it together, and they'll pop right out. So next up is pull the old intercooler out. The easiest way I find to do this without having to mess around with the cold pipe and everything else is you're going to lift up from the bottom and pull it out this way. It's going to be a little tight, so just kind of give it a tug a little bit, and then we're going to remove the cold pipe as we pull this out. The little clip I said we'd pull out after the fact kind of needs to be pulled out before. Okay. Whoops. Oh, it's wedged in there. Alright, now we got all the wires out of here. We're just going to go ahead and pull this out. Here's another deal we forgot to remove. This is the wire clip, so you can unclip this, or you can just take the bracket off. I like to just remove these if I can. I don't spend a lot of time on it. If for some reason I'm having a hard time getting it out, I'll just remove the bracket. And there we go. So again, a little pinch deal. Just pinch it together, pull it out. Remove this hose clamp here. And we're gonna do the same thing. I like to get the pliers in there and just pry it right off. So, got a little MAC valve hiding in here. We're gonna loosen the clamp a little bit. This little guy was wedged in there, so. And that's the removal of the stock intercooler. All this stuff, the only thing we're gonna reuse, we're gonna take this map sensor off here, or boost sensor, and we're gonna reuse that on the new kit. The new kit comes with a new O-ring to use for that, so it's supplied by 845. Intercooler out, the stock intercooler out, everything's out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and replace this bracket for the radiator. It just slides right on, just like that, just the way it was. And these bolts go right back in the bolt holes. Just be careful not to cross thread anything, take your time. Do here is cut the bracket off of the crash bar on the bottom. Basically, you're going to cut the thing off with the however you cut it off, and then we just sand the metal down. Give it a little whack. Maybe get some pliers, like I said, grab it, give it a little wiggle. Oh, came off easy. So, as you can see, how ugly that looks. So we're gonna use our flapper wheel now. We're gonna let this cool off for a little bit, and then we're gonna go ahead and spray paint that black just to protect it from rusting. Start of reinstall. So, all right, we got everything off the car prepped. We got the bracket off it, and we, cut the bracket out. So put the crash bar beam back on. There's 10 millimeter bolts, I guess, or studs, I guess you'd call them. Not tight, just thread it a little bit so it doesn't fall off the car. And we go ahead and put the 4 bolts back in on each side. So the 12 millimeters. leave that one for now. I think on all the aftermarket crash bars, I do put the sensor, the air temp sensor. You route this into this location right there. You can put this on the bottom of the car by the intercooler. You can put this in a lot of places. You'll probably get a better accurate reading if it's down here in the front of the car somewhere. It controls your temperature gauge for inside, for the outside temps, and I think it might even control air temp in general for the tuning of the car. So there's an argument to be made about putting this in the cold air stream. Here it gets a little bit warm because it's behind the bumper cover. So if you had this like somewhere in, in the airstream in front of the car where there's actually air hitting it, it's probably a little bit better. So, but I always put it here. So I'll stick with what I do. All right, we got the crash bar back on, and now it's time to get this thing assembled. First things first, what makes it easy if you install the cold pipe first. If you try to install this after the intercooler is already on there, you're going to be fighting it because of the angle. So I like to install this first, and then as you're putting the intercooler on, you press the intercooler into place with this installed already. These cold pipes from 845 are meant to go this intercooler side, this goes to the throttle body side. And the reason why they have this angle is for the automatic transmission. It will clear the automatic transmission. If I'm doing a manual car such as this, I like to flip the pipe completely around. So the nipple faces out. It just seems to fit better. It gives a little bit more room. The pipe doesn't hit anything. It's just a lot easier to install, a lot easier to deal with. So all the sensor wires, everything just out of the way so you don't see it in front of the car. It's just a lot cleaner. So with that said, we're going to install this first. So we put the coupling on the 60mm throttle body first, and then we just slide this down in the hole here, and then I'm going to slide it in there. But let me get a coupler real quick. You want to get the couplers, you slide it onto the pipe first, and then we're just rotate this thing in. Boop. And push it all the way in there, and then we'll get this clamp put on. Just leave this loose for now until we get the intercooler. The last thing we're going to do is run through this whole thing and tighten all the clamps. So we tighten this one in because that's just done, that's not moving. But we might need some flex in this pipe when we're installing the intercooler. So we'll leave that loose for now. After you get the cold pipe just situated here, you plug in the map sensor here. I like to run all the wires behind the cold pipe, just looks cleaner. You can run it in front if you prefer, it's up to you. You're gonna run your line over to your solenoid. We use the Maxo solenoids. You can buy these from us. We'll put a link down below for these. These work great. If you don't have one, you should probably get one. So these are awesome. And then we'll run a line coming down out to the blow-off valve after. And then we put the elbow in place, just setting there for now, and just place your clamps in place for now. We're not tightening them, we're just setting them there, just so they're there, so we don't forget. So the cold pipe is basically installed. Only thing we have to do is tighten everything up once it's done. So, all right, next step is to mount the intercooler on the car. The best way to do this would be to mount the bracket on the passenger side first, and then we will push in the intercooler on this side here on the cold pipe. So go ahead and push that up there, stick a bolt in there. So it just literally hangs on it. And then on this side, I'm gonna push the cold pipe onto the intercooler. All this will straighten up as we go through everything and tighten it. That's about good right there. And the last step would be, I'm gonna get a bolt for it. So we're gonna push up the intercooler and bend it into place to mount it with the mounting hole. I'm gonna put a little rubber gasket in here just to help with any vibrations. And this is gonna be a bit of a challenge. Gotta get this lower mount in there. All right, so this intercooler had a broken bracket, so I didn't want to weld into anything, so we built a steel bracket. I drilled and tapped the holes, put some 10mm bolts in there, and then we used a little rubber insulator basically. It's like a little ring seal type thing, just so that way when it vibrates, it doesn't vibrate the hell out of the car. So you want to tighten this down. You don't want to go overkill, but you tighten it down enough to get the gap at the top good. And it's about perfect right there. So we got the cold pipe side of it all pre-assembled. Everything, we left everything loose on this side. At this point, it's not moving. This is where it's going to live. So go ahead and button up the whole cold side. We're going to tighten every hose clamp. I use Makita just to get it, or Makita, the Matco, just to get it all the clamps tight quick, just to save time. I'll go over each one with the wrench just to make sure they're tight. And when you tighten these, when you think it's tight, tighten it a little bit more. You want it to where the wrench is starting to get hard, and then you don't want to force it down, but just to where you can start feeling it get tight and stop. So if you don't do that, you can get a boost leak, and we don't want that. We're gonna start here. So get it to where you like it. A lot of people will stop right there and say, oh, that's tight enough. That's not. So you want to get your wrench on there. Let's get a socket on there. Go. And we want to tighten it as much as you can tighten it. There's a lot left after you getting the impact on there. A lot of people will be saying, oh man, that's tight enough. It probably is, but these pop off all the time. I just like to get them nice and tight. Now you don't want to over tighten it. See right here, I don't know if you can zoom in on that, but there's these little two dots right there, right? They're just pinch weld. That's on your car. If anything goes wrong, you want to be able to access these clamps without necessarily having to take off your bumper. This one, with the bumper off, you access it through the side this way, but you can also access it coming from underneath the car this way. So just keep that in mind when you start putting these on there. You always want to be able to make it easy for you if something goes wrong. You will have boost leaks because it's a turbo car. You're going to have to adjust these and tighten these every once in a while. So. And again, from the sound of the impact, it's tight, but it's not. So you get in there and give it some cranks. And that is the cold pipe side of the install. It is complete there. Since we're on this side of the car, we're going to go ahead and install from the MAC valve to the blow-off valve line. The HKS kits come with a filter. You can use these or not use these. It's up to you. I use them sometimes I don't. It just depends. It's just a moisture filter, so, but we'll use it. Plug the hose up into the MAC solenoid or your stock solenoid, whatever it is you're using. It's on the bottom here. So just push that into place. And then you can button it up with a zip tie while you're in there. Zip tie it here, so it's just out of the way. I run it down the radiator, zip tie it here, and then I'll run it up into place like this. So it's just, or sometimes I'll actually run it over here too, and run it up the side so you just don't see it. You know, it's just a lot smoother, a lot cleaner that way. So we can go ahead and do that. The name of the game is just kind of hide everything. You know, if things are not flopping around or moving around as much, it just, you know, works good. But just make sure when you zip tie these, you don't crush the line. So just to hold it in place. That's all. So we'll run this one here too. Why not? We're not using the covers anymore, so we can utilize these locations for zip ties. If you guys are reusing the covers, obviously you can't put the zip tie in the spot, but okay. And then this will run right up into here, so we can measure how we want it, how we want the length, which I think right there is about good. clip this. It's going to sit right on that line. Push it all the way on there. But before we do that, we want to install this filter in the line. So pretty much the easiest way to do that is pick the middle, click the line. I don't remember which direction these go. By blowing in it both ways. I don't think it matters. And we need one more tie. We'll use this big one since this is what we got. So we're going to go up here and slide this all the way as far down as we can go. You don't have to do that, but I don't know why. Just, I like to make sure that's on there good. You use a little zip tie provided in the kit. This is just what I had grabbed, so you want that nice and snug on there so it doesn't pop off. And that's how we route our lines. It looks nice and clean. All right, now that we got the cold side buttoned up, we're gonna go ahead and remove this bolt here and get this lined up. We're gonna actually mount the horn here. And we went and sourced a longer bolt for this just because you could probably get the other one to work fine, but whoops. All right, so the horn's in place. You can go ahead and clip this little guy back where it goes. This goes to the fog light, so you leave that down, but this keeps it nice in here, You can zip tie all this stuff if you want to. You can leave it dangling. You'll never see this. It's actually fine just the way it is. So we'll put the hose clamps on this guy. So the AC lines have to be massaged over. This is what everyone talks about with these kits. You want the small line, you want to move it up as much as you can without kinking the line. So you really want to get some leverage on it and kind of push it up in here. It'll bend, just be careful. That's probably close to good. We still have a little bit more than 90 degree, I think about a 120 degree bend right there. That's about as much as we need to go. So the little line is fine there. What we want to do on the big line is there's this canister bulb thing, and I'm not even sure what the hell this thing is, and it's not a good design. Just gonna bend these around until you get it right. But anyways, we want the bulb to go this way, and you want this to go that way as well. But it can only go so far because you're gonna hit the filter. So, okay. Oh. Alright. There we go. Get that out of the way. I think we're good there. And you can bend this up in, and it's not touching anything there. It's completely out of the way. This will allow us to run the A45 pipe right through here without hitting anything. So that's about what you want it to look like. Okay. Yeah, nothing's touching, so you're not going to get a rattle. We might have to maneuver this a little bit, but we'll see how it goes when we install it. It's like off about a 1/4 inch. Now, what we can do to get that 1/4 inch back is trim here. Often on these cars I'll cut this whole thing off, but that's the only really way to get that to go in more. All right, guys. The hot pipe side of things gets a little bit tricky. So you saw that we moved the lines out of the way and pushed them up, and they're perfect to where they're at. They're not hitting anything, they're not hitting each other, so you won't get any sound out of that. What we like to do is put the hot pipe on the intercooler first, and we rotate it up. In order to get all these bolt holes, where the bolt holds this into place, right where my finger's at, right here. In order to get that to line up, you have to cut a bracket in the front. Now this is the bracket that holds your under tray that goes up to the fender liner. You don't need to cut this whole thing off. You basically just cut a 1/4 inch off. So if you can come over here and look at this one, we cut all this material off around the nut, the insert. See the insert there? We cut all this off. It's about a 1/4 of an inch. It's all you need to get this pipe to sit in here perfect. So it'll sit like that. It's not hitting anything. It's nice and free. That's a pretty good fit. And then when we come over here and put this bolt in, we're actually going to put another rubber grommet underneath and tighten it down onto the rubber grommet. So that way you don't get any of this rattling under the car ever if that bolt comes loose. But before you tighten any of this stuff up, we like to mock everything up. So we've already gone ahead and put this hose on the turbo, and we're just going to move this pipe out of the way for now and just kind of put everything in place before you put any clamps on it. We're going to take it off again, and just kind of see where everything's going to line up, because a lot of this stuff you're going to have to move around. So we'll just go ahead and don't press this all the way in, because once you do, it's not so easy to get off. We just want to make sure, just barely put it on there. Just make sure that everything's lined up. We don't have any kinks in any of the hoses. Right there, the way everything's set up, looks like it's going to be pretty good. So put the clamps temporarily into place and push everything where it goes, and then button it up that way. So now pull everything apart for now, and we'll just go ahead and put the clamps on. And these are we're gonna have to shrink this down a bit. Okay. All right, on these guys, put this, slide this on here. We put the brackets on in place already to where we have them, where we like to have them. Does it feel that way? They're not hitting anything, they're not in the way. So it's gonna sit like this. We wanna make sure these two brackets, they're all kind of like facing the same way. Some of it, I think I got this top one backwards. I'm gonna pull this off real quick and spin that top one around. And the reason why we want to spin that around is so it's actually easy to tighten. So if it's sitting like this, we can't get a wrench in there. So we want to flip it just like that. And now let's put that back on. Kind of just roll it around, and it'll seat itself down in there. Yeah, like that. And then position this. It's going to sit just like this. And that's that. And then the hose clamp for the hot pipe going in, we're going to have it sitting in here like this. But to make things easy, slide it under the pipe first. I'm going to bend this back and slide this pipe up. It's going to be a tight fit. When you have a problem and it doesn't want to go in, which can possibly happen, just get a screwdriver, work yourself under the coupler, and kind of just wiggle it around, and then get it in there. And then we're going to push that in there. This part might be hard to get leverage on. Another trick to the trade on this, to get this stuff to go in, would be hairspray. Get some hairspray. And let's see, the more in we can go, the better. That's about as much as I can get it on there with my little weak hands. I'll line up the hole still and everything, we're good there. So as long as you have that space there to get this hose clamp on, that's all you need right there. So now that this is in place, you can go ahead and tighten all the hose clamps to where you want them. Remember, you don't want them to hit anything or be in the way of anything, but you also want to make it so it's easy to access to tighten them. So keep that in mind when you're tightening these things. So that one's good right there. So now we can access all three of these just like that. Now this top clamp is going to be the hardest one to get to always. This is the most important clamp. This clamp is the one that wants to pop off all the time. So we want to make sure this one you tighten probably all the way until it's tight, touching. My hand's already tired. Try using my other wrench now. Odd location to get a wrench in. This is the boost leak central right here, so make sure this sucker gets as tight as it'll go. I ran out of deep socket room. Gotta switch wrenches. That's it. It is bottomed out. There's no way to get that any tighter. That's where it lives. Get this one. And we get these as tight as we can get them. That's as tight as that one will go. So those are all three tightened all the way. So we're gonna get our rubber grommet and we'll tighten this pipe down to the motor mount here. And we do a little two-tiered rubber grommet. So we have a rubber grommet inside of a rubber grommet. As you tighten these, they smash down. So we wanna try to eliminate that as much as possible. So we got ourselves a bolt with a washer on it. It didn't come with the kit, but we needed a little extra longer bolt. You don't need to put the rubber grommets in there. It's just a nice touch for vibration purposes. And on the top of here, if you notice, when you go to tighten it down without the rubber grommets, it gets really close to the casing of the engine. And we don't want that touching. It'll rub a hole through it eventually. So put the rubber grommets, it gives you a little extra spacing there. And you can crank this down nice and tight and it'll squash the rubber grommets in there. And it'll look like a flat tire in there. You want to just tighten it all the way and make sure this is nice and snug. Now this bolt, do not torque it more than like 30 pounds if you use a torque wrench. You will snap the threads in there, so you just want to snug it up nice and tight. That's about it. The grommets are in place all the way around, nice, and you got your gap on top. Everything looks good. We got all our clamps done, nice and tight all the way up to the top. Everything looks great. Nothing's touching anywhere. Clearance is good. All the way back, the lines are not touching anything. We're clear. We're not touching there. It's nice and cut. We go all the way around. Everything looks good there. So I kind of rotate it in like that. That's where I like it. And we'll do it nice and slow so it seats itself. Down. These boost leaks are not our friend. And that's as tight as it'll get. All the piping is in. That's pretty much the whole install of the kit. Now we just got to put the bumper back on and fire her up. There you go. All right, guys, that was the end of the install video for the 845 Motorsports intercooler kit on the 2014 Hyundai Veloster Turbo. If there's anything that you were confused about in the video or need help with, go ahead and contact us and we'll help you out on that. If there's anything in the future that you want to see, any videos, any ideas, tech tips, driving tips, whatever it may be, also get a hold of us and we'll make a video for you. And if you like what you see in this video, do us a favor. We'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to our channel. We got some big things coming for you guys, and we don't want you to miss out on anything. So again, we appreciate you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.